of CBRE global enterprise accounts, helping them leverage technology and data to make informed decisions. And as a firm, so us as our own end user, we actually have invested a lot over the last 6 months to evolve the design of our new Dallas headquarters. In considering how we want to involve the virtual world, so the metaverse, in addition to our physical footprint. And I know that we're just one example of the many, many firms who've been on a similar journey of late. And so I'm really excited today to explore the topic in greater depth and explore it with this really esteemed panel of experts. Before we get started, I'm going to hand things over to Larry Charlip, who's going to give a quick PSA for the ERS event that's happening in our region in a couple of weeks. And then we're going to do some quick introductions to the format today before we dive into the panel. So Larry.
Hi, and welcome. And I know everybody's excited about this topic, and I'm excited to learn about it as well. But I just quickly wanted to remind everybody that CoreNet ERS, which is a symposium of 5 Eastern Regional chapters, is happening this June, June 13th and 14th at Drexel University. Registration is currently open for end users and will open this Friday for service providers. So if you're an end user and you want to register, now's your chance, because it does fill up very quickly once it's open to service providers. They do limit the attendance to I think it's 400, so that it keeps the focus for the folks who are attending to that tight group, and makes it worthwhile. So again, it's happening June 13th and 14th at Drexel University. The hotels that have room blocks for the event are starting to fill up as well. So if you are looking to attend and you're an end user, now's the time to register before it opens to service providers. So we hope to see you there. I'm registered. A bunch of us at the New York City are as well. And we're really excited about the program ERS has this year. So I'm going to turn it back over to Laura to get on with our Understanding the Metaverse event.
Awesome. And Tommy actually dropped the registration link right in the chat. And something Larry didn't mention is we are obviously super competitive as a chapter. We like to win all things. So we do want to have the best attendance. And so if you're considering going, you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Tommy, Larry, any other members of the New York City board. We'd be happy to talk about why it's worth the trip. Philly is obviously only an hour away for most of us in the area, but I know it's sometimes hard to find time away from work. So we're happy to talk about the value of ERS. So talking about the metaverse, switching gears a little bit. At the top of the year, it became really obvious to us that the commercial real estate community was hungry for additional insights into the metaverse, given very little was being written or talked about relative to the seismic impact that this evolution is likely to have on our particular part of the industry. And a lot of the focus was being put on the impacts on retail and hospitality, as well as residential, but not really talking about how this was going to disrupt office in particular. So in response, we put together a 3-part metaverse series, the second installment of which is the event that you're attending today. So last month, we hosted a closed door roundtable with end users from across the United States, really looking to be a fly on the wall to understand some of the challenges and questions that they were hoping to overcome relative to those journeys in making investments in the metaverse. A lot of the insights from that panel were used to inform the content that we're going to go through today. And then we're going to cap off the series on May 17th with another lunchtime program, which will be featuring content centered around the end user perspective. So whereas today's session is going to focus on insights from the service providers who've stepped up to support those end user organizations on this journey, we'll close the series on May 17th by hearing from some of the end users themselves, specifically featuring some speakers from BCG Gamma, Epic Games, Radius AI, Space Matrix, and others. So that announcement will be coming out in the coming weeks. So look to register for that event. So the format for today, some of the feedback that we've had in understanding what would be really helpful for the next hour is a lot of folks are just looking for a baseline introduction to the metaverse. And then more importantly, everyone kind of is asking the question of why should I care? So we've invited Victor Delannoy to give a keynote address. Victor's going to spend about 15 minutes answering those two specific questions and providing all of us with a baseline understanding of what the metaverse is. And again, more importantly, why it's relevant for all of our businesses. And we really need to be paying attention to it. Then we're going to go into a panel discussion with the esteemed panelists that we brought here today. And then we're going to conclude by bringing Victor back to join our panel, and we'll do an open Q&A. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat if you're shy, either directly to me, your moderator, or just throwing them out there publicly. And I'll either try to incorporate them as we go through the panel discussion, or I'll get to them during the formal Q&A at the end. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Victor. Victor's a principal at Boston Consulting Group, where he's worked in various leadership capacities for almost 5 years. He's a core member of the firm's marketing, sales, and pricing practice, focused on digital marketing and e-commerce acceleration projects. But more importantly, to the context of our conversation today, he's actually a key member of BCG's global Web3 and Metaverse initiative. And over the past year has really quickly established himself as one of the premier experts in the space. And he's actually joining us from Paris. We were really excited to have him today. So Victor, I'm gonna pass things over to you to give us a quick 101 education in the metaverse, and then we'll bring it back and open things up to the panel thereafter.
Thanks a lot, Laura. Very excited to be here today to share about the metaverse. And I have 15 minutes, so I could talk for hours about that, but I have 15 minutes, so I'll try to do 3 things. First, introduce you to some definitions and concepts, the metaverse, NFT, Web3. Second, share with you that it's real, it's happening today. And third, get you to realize that you can start caring about that, and you can actually start doing some stuff. Before we start, I would just like to get a sense of the maturity on the table. We are almost 100, so it would be really interesting to see. With the 4 questions. The first question would be, do you own crypto? And I think you'll see a poll here that you can answer. We'll give you 10-20 seconds. Can we have a look at the result, Tian?
Yep.
If you can share that. Okay, 36%. So in fact, it's a bit more than we estimate that 20% of the US population owns crypto. Has been made popular by platforms like Robinhood and all. So actually, you're a bit more informed. Second question would be, do you own NFTs? And I would expect here to be slightly less. Let's give 10 seconds. Okay. Indeed, yeah, 20%. So as expected, a little bit less because it's more complex. Another question, do you own a VR headset? Okay, let's have a look. No, so 25% is quite big. We often associate metaverse with VR, and we'll see that it's not quite there yet today. And then, have you been to a metaverse? And I've cited a few. Okay. Okay, interesting. So for those who replied no to 1 or more questions, let's start by a small intro and small demo of what Metaverse could look like. In fact, there is not the Metaverse, at least not yet today. Metaverse come in various shape and forms, and you have really gaming platforms like Roblox, Fortnite that are associated to Metaverse. Then you have VR social experiences that are really event-based, And we'll talk more about that, but like rec rooms or VR chat. And then you have Web3 Metaverse. And I want to show you, for example, Decentraland in a quick 1-minute video. So it's very much like a game. And in fact, you don't access it through VR headset, but you access it through your Chrome browser and any internet browser. A small difference here is that you don't log in with an email and password, but you log in with a digital or crypto wallet like MetaMask, and I will explain briefly what it is just after. You have an avatar that you can customize with standard outfit, head, bottom, but you can also buy shoes or clothes for your avatar and bring them to the game. Once inside, you play with hundreds of other players and you can interact with them. And it's a very social experience. In fact, there are more messages sent on Roblox every day than on Facebook Messenger. Then it's an open world that you can visit, just like you would walk around a city. For example, you can visit an art gallery of NFTs. So you visit, you can check the NFT on OpenSea and sometimes purchase it or make an offer to buy that wonderful haul. You have some games like these poker tables, playing with frog croupier. In fact, you can earn real money, or you really have economics in these games. And you can visit stores. This is a Samsung that did a replica of their meatpacking district store inside Decentraland. You can visit. You have some videos and a tiger, and you can buy things. So some of you might be thinking, all this hype for this old school 2010 looking video game, is this a joke? And it may sound like a joke when you hear about some of the absurd numbers around here and absurd transactions. Like, for example, a small land on this platform, Decentraland, that you just saw, was sold for $2.4 million, which sounds quite insane. The simplistic game design is a reality across all these platforms. And in fact, when Gucci sells shoes on this platform, they sell it for $13. It was not VR. And why was it not VR? Because today there are only about 30 million headsets that have been sold globally. So it's not at all penetrated. And in fact, most people feel motion sickness when they wear this headset more than 30 minutes, 1 hour. And I'm not even talking about the NFT craze and this image that was sold for $24 million. But we believe it's not a joke, and it's not a joke for 3 reasons. First, this Decentraland, in fact, reflects the broader evolution of the web and this metaverse platform, an evolution towards Web3. What is Web3? You had Web 1, that was web pages that you as a standard users could go to and read the content, but not do much more. Web 2, it was the rise of platforms, especially social media platforms, where users could still read the content, but they could create some content. Yet most of the value creation was captured by these platforms. In Web 3, you have user reading, creating, and having the ability to own because of new technologies. What are these new technologies enabling Web 3? You have first digital identity. This is the famous wallet that you have. So you can interact with apps and with tools thanks to a digital wallet, a public address that contains no personal information, or just the information you are deciding to share. Second very important technology behind this Web3 shift is digital ownership enabled by NFT. What is an NFT in brief? It's a contract, basically, that is stored on a blockchain attached to one wallet. So it means that this picture that you have here of the cat, we can we can say for sure that it is owned by one wallet. And so you have provable ownership of this cat. And they come in many shape and form. And it unleashes this ownership, unleashes plenty of use cases. For example, the Bored Ape Yacht Club that Madonna bought recently. It's not just this picture. This picture could also become your avatar, your profile picture. It gives you some access rights to a community, to events. The land that you buy on Decentraland or on Sandbox is, in fact, in the form of an NFT. And the building that you put on top could be also in the form of an NFT. So you buy this building and you can resell it. Third big concept and evolution is user-created experiences. It will become, thanks to advances in game engines, 3D, AR, VR, it will become as easy to create a small game for any user as it is today to create a TikTok video. And so we believe that it will unleash creativity and will really make this platform more and more attractive. Especially Metaverse platform will make it broadly available, enabling creators to earn money with their experiences, and so creating a virtuous circle. Finally, decentralized organization, a fundamental difference between Web 2 platforms and Web 3 platforms, and not all Metaverse are Web 3 Metaverse, but Web 3 platforms, is that they are decentralized autonomous organization, meaning that all big changes on the platform are voted by the community, voted by users. This drives the second reason why it's not a joke. It is shifting attention of users from social media to new platforms, and especially these gamified experiences. We saw in 2020, 2021, a decrease of time spent on social media worldwide, even though time spent on screens was exploding. Where did its screen time go? It went to work platforms, of course, Zoom, like we're here today, but also on games, especially for younger generation, like plus 50% time spent for 15, 24 years old. They spent in, for example, on Roblox, which has, we estimate that 15% of the 10, 25-year-old in the US are daily users of Roblox, spending 2.5 hours a day. And it's not just gaming. It's also concert, like the Travis Scott concert on Fortnite that attracted 20 million people. So we tested that it was not only games, but we asked the question, like, would you put a VR headset and visit a virtual store where you can see products in 3D? And across all age groups, all geographies, people seem to be very interested, or neutral, but interested. So these new technologies enabling you to earn back ownership and control, the shift of attention is attracting funding and talents like we've never seen before. And what's interesting is that you have the traditional funding from VC, but you also have new ways of earning money, like Decentraland or Sandbox. They are able to earn money also from the sale of the land underlying it. Roblox is developing a new business model, which is not advertising based, but user engagement based, and fees on the money and the economy being played on the platform. So with this new paradigm, attention, money, talents, companies, of course, of all sorts are getting interested. We're talking to clients in automotive, in luxury goods, in consumer goods, in industrial goods, pharma. They are all looking at their metaverse strategy, all looking what to do. And good news, there are use cases for everyone. You have use cases of reach. Because it's where your consumers will spend more time, you can be there to showcase your product, to develop experiences. This is what Nike did on Roblox with Nike Land. Gucci did the showroom in Metaverse platforms. Second use case type, engagement. AR, VR, NFTs, Metaverse, offer you new ways to engage with your existing customers. So that's VR supported sales in the car dealer. It's metaverse entertainments like Louis Vuitton did for their 200 years. It's community building, giving NFTs that give you specific benefits. You have, of course, scores of new revenue and business models. Coachella sold these keys, lifetime access pass. You can do branded NFTs on top of your physical products. You can do new games, tokenization of anything. And finally, you have use cases of product optimization, of course, like authentication, traceability, digital twins of the factory, training, like AWS did. So before leaving the floor to the panel, 2 implications for you in the corporate real estate world. First implication, in any company, you might have new types of assets to manage. It could be land. We hear almost every day or every week any company acquiring some land on Decentraland, Sandbox, or elsewhere. Gucci yesterday, Pernod Ricard announced they acquired the land on Decentraland for Absolute Land to do something about Absolute vodka. You will have to manage buildings. Sotheby's, the Samsung store, these are buildings where you have to find an architect and you have to find things to do. You might want to evolve, reconstruct it. And third impact, with these workrooms and 3D experiences, it might also change your office strategy and office space strategy, and you might want to redeploy. Second big implication for you is that we, like any industry, we also think the real estate industry as a whole will be disrupted. You will have, of course, pure players, new business opportunities that are done purely in the metaverse, like selling metaverse parcels, land, building lots, developing properties, and we've seen more and more companies like Public or managing metaverse facilities. But you will also see new use cases of combined offers, combining NFT or Web3 technologies with real-world assets. Could be property titles shifted as NFT, could be attaching a virtual replica of your office space in New York for your employees to meet, or providing metaverse experiences on sites. Okay. I hope it was helpful, and I leave the floor to the panel now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Victor. And again, Victor will be joining us for the Q&A at the end of the panel. So I'm going to attempt to build on Victor's very sophisticated French accent with my Canadian accent in moderating us for the rest of the panel. To kick things off, Victor's talked very big picture about the metaverse and how that's impacting all industry. Something that I think is important that he covered at the very beginning is we often think about the metaverse as one finite singular entity, and the metaverse is actually many different metaverses. And so although we talk about it in singular, and we will today for the panel, just bearing in mind that we're actually talking about, as Victor introduced, many different types of environments that people are congregating in the virtual world. So again, Victor started us really big. Let's get more granular and talk about commercial real estate specifically. I'd love to kick things off by talking about, based on all of your experiences, but maybe I'll give us just a quick second, go around the horn. Guy, if I can get you to kick us off introducing yourself, then we'll jump to Ram, and then we'll finish off with Jim before we dive into questions.
Sure, thanks. I'm Guy Messick, Director of Design Intelligence at IA Interior Architects. And as many of you know, we're a global firm focusing on interiors and commercial real estate and workplace and retail and so forth. And I'm also running the IXR studio, which is, a little over 2 years old. Like when we all went home is when we kicked all this off. So that's my point of reference for extended reality and the metaverses today.
Ram, I'll invite you to give your introduction, and then Jim, you can bring us home.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Laura. Great to be on the panel. Thank you all for your time and joining us today. Ram Srinivasan. I'm part of our consulting team, managing director with JLL Consulting. Work with clients to solve for all of the complex problems thrown our way at the intersection of people, place, and technology. Fair warning, I'm a technology enthusiast, have studied at MIT, so you could not expect anything less. Look forward to today's discussion. Thank you again.
And hello, I'm Jim Kessler, work with Jacobs. We have two hats going. One, director of the Visual Media Group, a bespoke group of developers, artists, and technologists delivering visual communication solutions and strategies ranging greatly, everything from simple web development to extended reality solutions. And also I'm part of the the Solutions and Technologies think tank organization within the practice. And I'm the global technology leader for extended reality, developing and delivering a broad range of solutions, including things like the metaverse we'll be discussing today. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity and look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So first question that I'd love for us to discuss is, again, Victor kept us really, really big picture. Let's bring that into the context of corporate real estate. What are some of the immediate applications over the last 6 months to year that you've started to see emerge and that your clients have been coming to you to ask for support with? And Guy, I might start off with you. CBRE has been lucky enough to partner with IA for our headquarter project that I mentioned. So personally, I know that we've benefited already from some of the insight that you brought. Would love to hear, like CBRE, what are some of the applications that other clients have been picking your brain to help support in their initial forays into the metaverse?
That's a great question. I think part of this is working with our clients on the possibilities. This is still very new thinking, right? So we start with discussing possibilities, just like you do in architecture, right? You know, you look for the problem to solve, you help solve it, and then we start seeing the different segments. So first off, it's augmenting space. As you know, with your space, we took that space and put it up 400 feet in the air and did a lot of different work with it to augment meeting and collaboration. Second is people are looking for experiences for their customers, both for workplace and then retail is an obvious outgrowth there. Getting into customer experience and brand loyalties and things like that. And then we're seeing a whole entirely new thing that came up that I wish I could tell you I predicted, but I didn't. That's mixed reality for on the ground staffing, employees, everything from banking, retail to other spots where we take tech that was in the industrial world and bring it into mixed reality, into a more focused environment, just to help people get things done in a more human way. Sounds weird, I know, technology to be more human, but it kind of works that way.
I think great points, Guy. And just to add in terms of what we are hearing from our clients on metaverse applications, some of the questions we are getting are, like you mentioned, customer-facing applications. We've all seen in the press the likes of JP Morgan, HSBC doing a lot of exploration there. JP Morgan doing some retail exploration. There's also questions around workforce, talent, employee experience applications. We've had clients exploring some things like global town halls. You could do a 15,000 person town hall in the metaverse, for example. We've had a number of companies exploring recruitment, onboarding, training in the metaverse. Accenture's done this over several years through their nth floor, infinite floor. Amazon recently launched a cloud-based AWS training game, so there's a lot of application there. There's also thoughts around inclusivity in the workplace. So for example, can metaverse applications make workplace environments more accessible, bring more workplace equity, support neurodiverse talent, these kind of things. So tremendous interest, curiosity on this topic.
And to kind of tag on to what both Ram and Guy have talked about, there's a lot of the clients are coming just with just the question of what is it and how is it going to impact our business and our constituents and our community members moving forward? And so again, we're doing a lot of this definitional kind of helping them understand these impacts and have the dialogue like we're having today. Also kind of informing them about the individual discrete solutions that we're already providing that give an inkling to what that would be. That's immersive design review and collaboration, things like the Wild. Also, we've branded what's called VES, Virtual Engagement Solutions for Community Involvement. So again, immersive, screen-based virtual reality type of experiences that a lot came to bear because of the pandemic. And then also, what does the workplace look like in the future? And we understand that these technologies are going to be seminal in that experience and to bring and collaborate in the future in a much more immersive, connected environment.
So I kind of teed you guys up with a very finite question of what are you seeing? Maybe to broaden the aperture of that, what haven't you been asked for yet, but that you believe is going to be an emerging trend or a way in which we start to see an evolution or better utilization and maximizing of the metaverse's capabilities within the corporate real estate context? So maybe just broadening that question. Are there things that you're not yet being asked for by your clients, but that you're starting to anticipate as firms?
I think there's a lot there, Laura, and I think Guy alluded to this, right? So a lot of applications in the metaverse are limited only by the imagination. And right now it's early stage of exploration. This technology and the platforms are emerging. And as they reach greater maturation and converge, you will have greater exploration. As you have more creativity come into the metaverse, you'll have more exploration happening. So just a couple of examples. You don't have to be limited by the laws of physics in the metaverse. So why have regular office space where you could fly and you don't need to walk? So how can you think about experiences in the metaverse environment where you're not limited by the realities of your office? Or, for example, we in the real estate industry will talk about HVAC and air quality. Imagine showing your employees the path of an air molecule from the perspective of the air molecule as it travels through your HVAC system in your digital twin office. This is a whole different realm. It's an expansion of the aperture that we have had. It's an intersection of many worlds. It's a virtual reality, and as Accenture calls it, real virtualities as well. There's mixed reality XR environment. So it's one way to think about the metaverse as being tomorrow's internet, and the possibilities are limitless.
We're seeing clients working with us through these design problems, and initially they want their branded space with their materiality and their corporate culture, but you can go pretty far. And what we discovered is that good design still applies. So we're going to wait and see, like Ron, for instance, how far do people want to go? Right now, there's comfort levels. And I do have to disagree with Victor a little bit on the number of people who are just uncomfortable in modern headsets. I think the standalone headsets have been proven to be pretty reliable on comfort level. But what does it mean to then explore a space and go beyond? I think we're going to be seeing this with current clients, including CB. And what could that mean? I think there's a lot of places that haven't been directed yet, and that's to do with DE&I, corporate responsibility. How do we start tying this into carbon footprints and retention of talent and attraction of talent? And I think there's a lot of possibilities. When you start talking about workplaces available anywhere, that's a huge conversation. And now the tech is beginning to back that up.
Let's dig into that a little bit more, because both you and Ram have touched on that. The metaverse, love it or hate it. I mean, there's two sides of the argument of whether it dehumanizes the experience or it can actually help to bring greater connectivity. And Ram, you talked about accessibility and starting to accommodate the fact that people are displaced, but also people have different accessibility challenges, and the metaverse may help us to overcome those. And then Guy, you touched on improving upon workplace experience. What are the human factors that you're seeing kind of reoccurringly, or that you think are going to be the most significant plays in the investment, or I guess justifying the investment that companies are making in the metaverse? So specifically, how do we expect that this will help to improve employee experience?
I can
go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. I think what the biggest area here is around teamwork and collaboration. And I think that's a huge area where the metaverse can help bring greater human centricity. We've been kind of trapped behind our computer screens, and this allows you to explore a little bit more. We're seeing a lot of exploration in this phase. Your digital avatar, for example, can pop in and out of offices, inside and outside of meeting rooms. You can walk up to virtual help desks. You can provide relaxation to your people through networking lounges. You can have live presentation from daises. Think about your onboarding experience. Likely all of us were given a PDF document when we entered our companies. We typically lose concentration in 10 minutes. Instead, think about walking through a 3D, 4D experience, hallway, gallery, multiple interactive stands. You could interact with people, bump in, have experiences there, create connection right away. And I think that's where some of the applications stand. Share some examples. A company called Unique, technology platform that creates digital humans. So they're doing some very interesting stuff, just to share with folks on the panel. So for example, they have Nola, which is a digital shopping assistant concierge. They have Daniel, which is a digital double of a UBS chief economist, can meet multiple clients at the same time. So in a way, it helps you provide more personalized experience to your clientele as well. So faster learning, new ways to work, new ways to learn, new ways to play.
And just to tag on that a bit from what Ram just mentioned, is that we have things like Epic Games MetaHuman, and they're rolling that out right now. So the idea of an avatar, and I kind of jumped a couple questions ahead, but the idea of an avatar based and a common platform that can feed across on all the metaverses, so that there's a commonality to it. So you can have that experience, whether it be in a work environment or a community environment or whatever else you're engaging with, that you have that kind of commonality and comfort level with who you are in the metaverse. So I think that we're just at the tip of that. And what does that look like? And how do we implement that? And that can be a commonality of experience too. So a lot of back-end infrastructure to support the metaverse as it will exist.
So another, I think, popular topic right now in the industry, which has huge implications in the metaverse, is ESG. Again, a very polarized topic. On the one hand, there's a lot of concern around the prevalence of cryptocurrency in fueling the metaverse, and cryptocurrency obviously not being a terribly sustainability friendly. On the other side, the fact that it will allow for less travel, and so obviously fewer carbon emissions. And then kind of the buttressing macro discussion of, are we directing important resources towards building this fake world, as opposed to directing those resources to helping us improve life on this planet? Would love to hear your perspectives, either direction on that spectrum of how the metaverse, again, within the context of corporate real estate, is really going to play a meaningful role in moving the ESG needle.
I think with the ESG needle, I'm going to lump in a little DE&I in there also, Laura. How are companies and clients focusing on their responsibilities with their people and what that means? And if we look at a reality of a fairly significant percentage of people are not going to want to commute in every day. But that doesn't mean less real estate. It means different kinds of real estate. So that can be carbon footprint. It can be health and welfare. It can be mobility, working with people no matter where they are. But I think on the other side of responsibility, we're starting to interact with HR departments on codes of conduct in virtual space. Like, how does that work in another space? And it seems controllable, and everyone wants their stuff behind their own firewall. That helps. It's not an open public forum. But all those things you think about in real space are now connecting over into, once you virtualize a space and staff are in there, okay, now we start having those human discussions about what does that mean. But we haven't heard anyone say this is detracting or taking away from our portfolio. It's adding to it. And what is that going to mean on the corporate responsibility side? I think we're just discovering now.
Yeah, I would agree with Guy and Laura. Your question sums up why this calculus is not as simple as it seems. So you have the reduced commute and cars pollution, but there's also air travel, and air travel is a significant contributor to overall ESG and emissions and so on and so forth. So there's potential there to reduce. There's trade-off with physical office space, like you said. On the flip side, the technologies are power hungry, so and energy hungry. So how will they source some of that energy, and what happens with that? And a lot of technology companies have outlined plans to be energy free or even carbon negative. So I think these are trends to watch. This calculus is not as simple as it may seem.
Just to add a bit onto that, again, thinking about how these environments will have an opportunity to be built upon a foundation and an architecture that can be inclusive. It can be equitable across the board because we're defining it in a current period. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. We are looking for sustainability opportunities across many of our businesses within Jacobs, and just like Guy mentioned, these ideas of the performance of the environment, of the built environment is key and can be driven. And as Ram mentioned, experience from a scalar opportunity across the board. Again, it has as a unique opportunity to inform. And as we inform and teach, that brings more of the ESG principles to bear and creates great offerings and new opportunities.
So I'll push back a little bit, and I get that that's a hard question, but it sounds like we don't really have an answer yet. And so I guess my follow-up question is, are your clients really pushing you for the need to come up with tools to help quantify that? Or are they sort of like you, where they're really feeling it out and a little bit more relaxed right now and understanding whether it's going to have an ESG impact?
I think we're still connecting with multiple groups within our clients' organizations. These are large organizations at times. So sometimes we come in through the CRE doors, sometimes through more facilities or data sciences side, Laura. And we're very fortunate that people are saying, wait, we should connect others to this. And so we've just in the last week started talking about a more higher level corporate side of things. I'm talking to, CEOs and CFOs now, whereas before it was more, people that are driving workplace. I think it's evolving. I think it's fair to say, I'll be conservative and say weekly. that's the change that's happening. And it's still very pilot oriented now, working with like the lab groups with the large clients or with expanding workplace that everyone knows. So they can see, oh, I recognize that, it's just a little different now. But connecting it up with the CPOs, that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Right. So I have two final questions before we open it up to formal Q&A. These are maybe looking a little bit more to the future. The first is, what's next for the metaverse, and what aren't people thinking about? So previously I asked you, what are some of the ways in which you think that this is going to impact our industry that people haven't asked you? I'm broadening the aperture. What are ways on a macro level that you foresee the metaverse being very, very impactful, and that you're not necessarily seeing written about in the New York Times or talked about in other podcasts that should be top of mind for this group? Just a little hot potato. Who's going to take that, Guy?
Okay, I'll jump in.
Thank you, Guy.
Getting back to, Jim was talking about, and this is, we've been using VR for design for many, many years, and it just wasn't great early on. It was important, but the equipment and the hardware, et cetera. I think within the business, the idea of virtualizing strategies, design, change management towards the built environment. Right. This is what are the steps and the coordination you can do to improve the experience and the value and the economy of building space, real space. That's coming back online finally, thankfully. And I think that interaction between, stakeholders, end users, designers, engineers, contractors, everybody through the food chain inhabiting these spaces well before they're built is going to be pretty normal very soon. I think that's a big one people are catching up to. We're focused a lot on metaverses, but I think that's a big one. But also there's going to be, how much stake do individuals get in a metaverse in the creation and their intellectual property and content. So we're studying what is that going to mean, the value beyond tokenization and the great stuff Victor was talking about, but what about the empowerment of the client, the individuals? What's that going to mean in your ownership, if you will, of what you're contributing? I think those are two big factors that are coming sooner than later.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Guy. I think this is I'm linking back to our ESG conversation there. It's actually amazing that we are having the conversation about the metaverse in the light that we are having it, and it's a reflection of the times that we live in. I think there's an evolution of humanity's consciousness in a way, and we are having this conversation in the context of how can we benefit the maximum number of people in the right way. How can we think such that our profitability is not in conflict with the planet? And I think that's an incredible way to think about this. And I think Victor referenced this in his conversation as well. And you see this movement towards more decentralized autonomous organizations putting more power into individuals and creators' hands. It's a different way of thinking about the economy, a different way of thinking about relationships between businesses. So this is a whole different revolution that we need to consider. And it's time for leaders to kind of catch a glimpse of this, experiment with it, see where it goes, and learn from it.
Jim, I don't know if you still wanted to jump in. I think you and Ram jumped in at the same time.
It's good. Ram covered points
Okay.
I was going to make.
All right. Then my last question is, when we think about any new major innovation and new creation of an industry has secondary industries that crop up to support it. And Ram, I loved a comment you made earlier and in a previous conversation that you and I had, you referenced Inception, where the game designer, as soon as she realizes that she's not bound by the kind of rules of reality, it just sparks her creativity. And you sort of tied that in with an earlier comment around removing traditional either architectural obstacles or just obstacles to the physical world, which don't exist in the metaverse. And so kind of on that lens, would love your thoughts as my closing question on what are some of the secondary industries that you foresee cropping up to support this emerging and growing space?
I think one interesting way to think about this, Laura, would be as intersection or overlapping industries. And I would even broaden that a little bit to say overlapping competencies. So I referenced Amazon creating a AWS training game, AWS Cloud Quest. And it's a role-playing game where you can help people build cloud computing skills. Essentially, users navigate a virtual city, and they help the virtual citizens solve IT issues on the cloud. And they earn points for completing simulation and puzzles. So if you think about creating something like this, it's not a programmer alone who does this, or it's not a UX developer alone who does this. You need this convergence of skill sets across computing, programming, gaming, UX, UI, content development, the whole spectrum. And I think as we have more of these spectrums explore the metaverse, you will have greater creativity come out of it, and there'll be exponential value for all of us.
And to go on with that kind of same topic is, again, my group, we hire game developers now almost exclusively. So you think about one of the world's largest engineering solutions provider, and we're hiring game architects and game developers because we're thinking about what that means, those experiences are, and then combining that with the expertise throughout the different fields, and then bringing thought to bear creatively about how we do that. And kind of going back to that kind of one-to-one relationship, when we think about all of the history of human-computer interface, we always start with the most literal interpretation, right? I go back to CAD. You think about CAD, initially you drew a line and you crossed it and you trimmed it off. You think that's such a parallel to the paper environment. And it took that couple steps to get people to really start to think about how you leverage that true environment. And I think that, again, we're headed there. I think there's some commonality. You start at the ground floor and you get people into that environment. And then as more people are engaged in that environment, more ideas will come to the forefront. And that's where, again, going back to adaptive quickness in development, all of a sudden tomorrow we could be stepped upon something and go, wow, that's it. There's it. We need to run with that.
I think let me just finish up here. There were some comments about security and cybersecurity, super important. And right now, in fact, it's holding back some of the tech because we want to make sure it's secure. I think a secondary industry is going to be consultancies we think of in the real space, but in the virtual space. That's security consultants for sure that can directly influence the game developers and the programming, as well as AV. What is AV like? Because we're entering cyberspace and we're seeing visuals and screens in that sense. So I'm seeing a level of expertise, just like we team up on large real projects, we'll be forming teams to create amazing virtual experiences.
All right, great. So I wove in some of the questions that folks messaged me privately, but two outstanding questions that came through on the chat during, and feel free as well if you haven't asked a question yet, but you'd like to ask a question to drop it in the chat now. One of them, and I don't know if it's a good question for this audience, we'll see if you have a perspective on it, and otherwise I'm going to make sure that we ask it on the May 17th event. But the question was, how would a facilities manager begin to train on managing a metaverse facility in comparison to a physical facility? I think that's a really interesting question. And maybe to expand on that, like what are the considerations, not just how to train on managing, but what are the considerations to maintaining a metaverse facility as opposed to just a physical facility?
I'll jump in because we're kind of managing those right now for clients. For the managing and the training and the onboarding, you need specialists. That's what we found. We have a staff of amazing folks that do that. They onboard people, they work with them to make sure they're comfortable. That's a super high value. Letting people figure it out themselves is simply not an option, nor should it be. Sometimes we do that on day one, a new office space. Like, here's your PDF, as Ram said. Here's your plan. Here's where you're working. Go get them. Not quite efficient. And then on the maintenance of it, then you're getting more into that interface back to the group that needs to drive those decisions, and you need the tech to make those changes. So again, it's an ecosystem about the human aspect, the HR, the people, and then there's maintaining, updating, and taking analytics, for example, we're beginning to do on how is the space being used virtually. So you can then maybe make some changes based on real patterns, like we do with sensors in the real space, just doing in the virtual space.
Anyone else before I move on to the next one? Ram, Jim, Victor, anyone else have an opinion on this?
I think it's a great response by Guy, and I wouldn't look at this as do you translate your physical space facilities management skill set to metaverse, and are they portable? Yes, some of those skill sets are portable, but you also need to bring in new skill sets. So it's an evolution, it's a widening of the aperture, and you will bring more skill sets to solve for some of these problems.
And just to add to that, again, it's the idea of broadening that experience. We just talked about this kind of one-to-one. It's not a one-to-one, it's a one-to-many. And then what does that look like? And what are those opportunities that we're not even discussing today? We're thinking about IoT sensors. I agree with a Guy about POE, post-occupancy evaluation. You think about real-time pathway analysis of users in your space to better identify how that's used. What is the metaverse version of that? I think it's broadening more technical capability to the staff, more leveraging of existing data sets, things that may not have been achievable before because of the nature of where it's set or what format it's in. Now you have this great environment where the commonality, the ability to tie things together can really take a powerful place.
All right. Next question is, and actually this wasn't a question, but I thought it was a really thought-provoking comment, which deserves to be addressed by Georgia's dad, Paul, who's been super active on chat. So Paul mentioned there isn't today equity between the physical and virtual worlds, just movement from one to the other, and they exist independent of each other until the physical no longer exists, which is a really creepy thought. Maybe Paul has been watching too much sci-fi, or at least I hope. I hope we always have a physical world. My question to the panel in addressing that is, how today are we, or do you foresee maybe in the future that we're going to bridge that, where there is more seamless kind of participation between worlds? And Guy, you sort of touched on this with the fact that an investment in the metaverse doesn't necessarily mean less real estate. It means an extension of real estate. But I think maybe in a very operational context, how do we see this evolving such that it isn't necessarily troubled with the barriers to entry that we see today, which do create that fracture?
I'm going to go back to design because I'm an old architect, but we're currently, it's sort of mixing the two things, Laura, but looking at how does design change to accommodate and make it more seamless. So we're entering into a pilot, a meeting with these folks today in San Francisco about designing in virtual space what may be designed in real space as part of the portfolio. So what they're finding is with different populations during a week, different people, some are remote, some are in office. How does that free up space? And what does that space look like to become a room to use as a VR or a mixed reality space? So we're going to begin design charrettes today, start looking at what that means, building that in there based on what we know today. And future proofing is a difficult word we say, but how does that work? I think mixed reality, where you can see virtual holographic, if you will, versions of people from wherever they are in office together. There's been some movement on that. We're working with some folks at Microsoft about some of that through the mesh platform as well. I think that'll be coming soon also, but right now we're going to try and look at space for extended reality and virtual reality interaction in your space with anyone else in their location, whether remote or in other offices, Paris to New York, San Francisco to Toronto, wherever it might be. So, design isn't always the answer, but often it is.
To
Sorry,
add
go
to
ahead.
that, I think there is a complete redefinition of the tech stacks and the access stacks that we know today. We are used to having these big platforms that you have the Android and Apple that you access through your phone or your browser. And there are new technologies, the VR headsets, but not only in-car experience. So it will be much easier to log in or to access some of your properties outside. So you might see some of the barriers between virtual world and physical world disappear.
Yeah, I would just add that, if we think of this as stages, we are presently in this emerging phase. As you go forward, you'll have more advanced applications, and eventually you'll get to a stage where this is mature. And maturity from the perspective of the metaverse, and Laura, you began our conversation today on this topic, so we've come full circle. Metaverse is not a singular element. So you have many virtual worlds. Is there interoperability between those worlds right now? Each of those applications have slightly different interfaces, different ways of connecting, so on and so forth. So how do you bring those together and how do you make them interoperable? So that's probably stage one. And then what Paul's referencing is probably stage beyond that, which is where you cannot distinguish between physical and virtual reality. And that's a whole different area of exploration. We perhaps need a 1-hour conversation on that.
I'll say one thing that I go with what we work with on our clients, and there's been a very consistent statement in that people are preferring virtual meetings and metaverses with a few different platforms and avatars to Zoom meetings. And I couldn't have predicted that. I thought, when are we going to get there? How do we work hard to get there? And we're seeing that more and more. We're getting direct statements like this is the most fun we've had since we all went home 2 years ago. That blew my mind, that people felt that immediately passionate, strong about it. So I think we're on the right track, and it's people's responses and direct human feelings that are helping me listen and help direct this. But I think it's the right direction.
Well, and not to overly simplify the conversation, but for anyone with kids, you needn't look any further than your living room with the communities that they've built online with their gaming friends. And I think we're really just on the cusp of starting to see that migrate into the workplace. So unfortunately, that brings us to the top of the hour. This has been actually really fun. So thank you all for that. And thank you to everyone that attended. Great engagement on chat, which kept this really fun as well. And really awesome questions. So again, if you liked this topic and you're curious to see it from the end user perspective, join us on May 17th. And I'll just close out by thanking Guy, Ram, Jim, and Victor. You were all excellent, and really, I learned a lot through this process as well. So I just want to thank you all for your time.
Very
Thank you.
welcome.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.